So welcome back to a new Game Stuff episode, and I just want to talk about some of the things that I picked up over the last month and a half. Some of them have been ordered a long time ago, have finally showed up, and I always like doing these episodes, as I say quite a few times, for sure. I've got some really good stories with some of these, and our first story starts with this little game right here, Tales of Vesperia. What is the deal with this? Why did I pick this up? What's going on with it? Okay, so the interesting thing is that Bandai Namco is, bringing this game out again this Christmas. I think on the Nintendo Switch, on the PS4, maybe on PC as well. I haven't checked into that, but anyways, they're re-releasing the game. Now, this was a game that Rob had picked up back in the day, and him and his wife were playing. And sounds crazy, but I was super jealous, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta pick that game up, I gotta play it. And you know how life gets kind of busy, and I never got around to playing it. It's a JRPG, another one in the Tales series, but people herald this as being one of the greats. And so I wanted to pick this game up on the 360 and get a little bit of a backstory before I start playing the remastered port that's coming out this Christmas. And so I really wanted to pick this up. So what I decided to do was go on Craigslist and see if I could get it really cheap. So I went on Craigslist. This is an interesting story. I went on Craigslist, typed it in, and there was a copy, this copy right here, for $20 Canadian, which is just wonderful. And it said, mint copy, all that stuff. And probably, it's not too far away from me as well. So I wrote to the person and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this game. Are you still selling it? And they're like, yeah, I am. And I guess they had seen the email. It said like happyconsolegamer.info@gmail. That's what I use, for my business email per se. And they recognized the name and they're like, oh my god, I watched your show. That's so wild. Yeah, dude, like come on over and all that. And I was like, oh wow, amazing. And I was thinking, what a small world. What a small world. So I will not mention his name because, people want to keep their names, don't want them public and things like that. But I went to this person's house, knocked on the door. I went over with Kim, and yeah, he knew me. He watched the show, and he had a copy of like Grand Theft Auto that he wanted me to sign. It was one of my very early episodes when I waited out at night to pick up that game. And so he wanted me to sign his copy of the game, which was just so cool. And this guy was such a nice guy, and he was so into video games, and he fixed up Super Nintendos. It was like one of his hobbies that he did on the side. And I told him, we had this really cool conversation. He really watched the show. And I said, listen, dude, this is going to the right home. For sure, this is going to the right home. And he's like, absolutely. And he's downsizing his collection a little bit. And so that's why I was lucky enough to get this game. But what a wild thing. And that's what kind of makes the show, for me personally, so fantastic. That it kind of brings like-minded people together. Like me and this guy. I mean, that's so cool that we're both into JRPGs, and then he actually watched the show, and I got to meet him, and we got to talk, and we just share our love about video games, and that's what this is all supposed to be about. And so that was really a lot of fun with that, and I can't wait to start playing this game right here. Now, I went to pre-order the Resident Evil 2 Collector's Edition, the PS4 version, at EB Games up in Vancouver. I had gotten a little hint that you could pre-order it that morning, so I just drove down there and I went in and I pre-ordered the game, and I was like, oh good, yeah, I got that pre-ordered. I love Resident Evil 2, as you can see, and so it was like really great to pre-order that Collector's Edition. So, couple of funny things that happened. These things have so many stories. It's so weird that I'm just looking around, kind of wasting a bit of time in EB Games, and I saw Mortal Kombat XL, and it was like $20, and I was like, I've been waiting to get this game all this time to get the complete version for a really cheap price, and that's the thing I will recommend. I talk about a lot of new games on the show for sure. Here's my piece of advice. Wait till they all come cheaper. They will always go cheaper. Even if it's on Amazon, you can get it on Craigslist and all that. Because to buy all these games new is very expensive. So just wait it out like I did for Mortal Kombat XL, which was so good. The definitive, and I will say, one of the greatest Mortal Kombat games ever made. I'm just so blown away by this game and the extras and the other characters and oh my god, the alien in there. I mean, I could go on and on and on. What a phenomenal game. So I went up, I paid for this, paid for the collector's edition, and I'm leaving EB Games. And just as I'm kind of like getting out, the store manager, I guess the store manager and another employee, and there was another customer, they all kind of leaned together as I'm walking out, and they're like, is that the Happy Console Gamer? I heard that when I'm leaving, and I was just like, what the hell? What the hell? And what, again, I'm stressing, what a small world we live in. What a small world. The internet has brought everything so much smaller, even though we're all, spread out with a distance and things like that. It's just, for those two games that I bought, over the last month and a half, to have that happen. It's a wonderful thing. Let me tell you, I'm saying it because it's a privilege. It's really, I feel like it really warms my heart when I hear that. I'm like, oh my God, it's so wonderful that people recognize me from the show. They recognize me from something I love so much, which is video games and all that. And it's taken 10 years and the show's getting a little bit of recognition and it's nice. I just think it's really nice, really humbling, wonderful. I mean, so anyways, yeah, those are my stories about that. Where, do you know, I ordered this off eBay maybe about a month and a half, two months ago. It's been sitting on the shelf. I haven't brought it out. I thought with Mortal Kombat XL, this would be a great time to bring this up. This was a game that I have wanted for a long time. And I used to have it in my collection. And I sold it. When, I did my big purge in my early 20s. And I got rid of Mortal Kombat 2. And what a travesty it was. And I gotta say that when I first saw Mortal Kombat 1 in the arcade, I liked the game. I thought it was a beautiful looking game. But being a young, you gotta understand, I was like a young kid. I was like, oh, they're trying to compete against Street Fighter, but it's not as good as Street Fighter. And I had that kind of mentality. But yet I was always in the back of my head also saying, wow, those graphics are really fucking awesome. And, I had that kind of monologue going on as well. So it was weird back then. You either were a Mortal Kombat fan or Street Fighter fan. It kind of seemed to be that way in my neighborhood anyways. And then Mortal Kombat 2 came out. And I never played it in the arcade, but the Super Nintendo Genesis version was the big freaking deal. This was a big deal game, folks. And I remember I bought my copy and I loved it. And let me tell you something. I suck at Mortal Kombat. I'm good at Street Fighter. I'm really good at Street Fighter. Mortal Kombat, I've never been good at. I don't know the command inputs or whatever. It's so different than Street Fighter that I was never really able to kind of get with the program as much as I would like to. But that doesn't take anything away from my absolute love and admiration for Mortal Kombat 2 on the Super Nintendo. This is a classic and a must-own game. And you know what's really sad? I even got rid of my Street Fighter 2 back then. Oh my God, my copy on the Super Nintendo, I'll have to get that back eventually as well. But I had to own this game because I really remember where I was at. I think I must have been about 19, I think I was 20 years old when this came out, which is like 24 years ago. And just absolutely loved it, the fatalities and all the characters and the graphics of the time. And I was just always trying to invite my friends over, and we were all trying to get good at Mortal Kombat. None of us ever got good at Mortal Kombat, but we all tried to, and what a really great game. And man, talk about a blast from the past, for sure. And speaking of blast from the past, I don't even know where I was at a bunch of months ago. Whenever I order something from Japan off eBay, it takes months to get here, and this took months to get here. And I don't even know, I was reading online one night, and all of a sudden this huge memory came back to me about when the Super Nintendo was first released, and I was getting video game magazines, and I was reading about a lot of role-playing games that were only in Japan, that they weren't over here, and they may have come over. That's what they were promising. These may come over, and they never did. And all these years pass, and I remember picking up this magazine and looking at this one game, and I was like, God, this looks so good. And that is Gatekeeper. on the Super Famicom. This is an RPG, and it's only years later that I find out it was a book series. It was a book series in Japan, like a novel series, and then that got turned into an anime I've never seen. I saw some clips recently online that it does exist, but I wanted to get the game. I didn't know the game was based on all these things. So the game is based on the anime, which is based on the book. I just thought it was an original RPG. I had no idea. And I just remember looking at that graphic there, you know, the kind of the floating satellite world thing. I was like, wow, this is like, I kind of thought it was going to be like Phantasy Star. And I always hoped it would come out over here. And it never did. It never absolutely did. And it's funny, all these years later, that memory of that magazine was so instinctively in my mind that I was so nostalgic about it that I was like, I really have to own the game. And that's the wonderful thing I've mentioned in some of my past New Game Stuff episodes, is that a lot of Super Famicom older games are dirt cheap. I think I got this for like $14, which is just absolutely a steal. And you know what? The game is pretty cool looking. The game has some really good graphics. And in Japan, I have a friend of mine, Jimmy Hoppa, who says that RPGs were realistically like our sports games over here. We got flooded with sports games. Where in Japan, they're just flooded with RPGs back then. And we weren't back then the same way. And I think that's why when we see something like this, we're, oh my God, it's an RPG. You get so excited about it. Where Japan's like, yeah, we got another RPG. No big deal. But really happy to pick that game up there. Now we're moving on into some Blu-rays here. And the first one is a video game movie. And a very, very important movie from my childhood and from a lot of your childhoods as well. I'm talking to all the older people out there. All the older people know what I'm talking about. This just finally got released on Blu-ray. The Wizard with Fred Savage. You know, California. This is a classic movie. And I sat down, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and I watched the entire movie again. What did I think? I think the movie is a wonderful, nostalgic, happy place from my childhood that still holds up to this day. I mean, this was the quintessential movie, video game movie back then, and I love it, and the music, and there's so many amazing moments. The Power Glove, it's so bad. There's so many great iconic moments there. The reveal of Super Mario 3, which at the time was like the biggest deal you'd ever seen. Now, when I picked up this copy, I tweeted out that I bought it, and I think I put a picture on Twitter and all this, and somebody wrote back to me. This is before I watched it. I think I was in the car. I picked it up from the post office, took a photo of it, and somebody had written, oh man, yeah, it's a great movie, but I just watched the remaster of it, and they've turned up the sharpness on it too much. And I was like, the sharpness on it? Really? You know, and that haunted me. Until I watched it, I was always thinking about the sharpness. They turned that up too much. I watched the movie, and I'm sorry I don't remember this person on Twitter. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. It's like I know a lot of people don't do video editing, and a lot of you do video editing. The sharpness that you can just turn up, even in Photoshop, you can just sharpen things. It's a little artificial if something's a little soft, and I don't know why they did it, but it's really noticeable, unfortunately, that the sharpness is just turned up a little bit, and you feel it. And if he didn't say that they turned it up, I don't know if I would have felt it as much, but I did think it's a good transfer. It's not a great transfer, but it's the best we're ever gonna get, and it's totally worth watching. It's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm so sorry for putting that into your minds as well about the sharpness now, but it's something that was very, very noticeable, but doesn't take away from a wonderful movie. I've waited for this on goddamn Blu-ray for I don't know how many years. I thought they forgot about it. They have not forgot about it. It's still here. I'm glad they brought it back, for sure. Now, here's something that really brings up my age. I don't know if a lot of you out there watch Doctor Who. I've never talked about Doctor Who on the channel that much. But I grew up in the 70s, into the early 80s, and I watched Doctor Who back then, and Doctor Who was a lot more creepier than what it is now. And Doctor Who now, to me, is more of an adventure show than anything, and I still like it, but I don't like it like I did in the 70s and 80s. And everybody always asks me, who is your favorite Doctor Who? That is the easiest thing to answer in the entire universe, no pun intended. That is Tom Baker. Tom Baker is my Doctor Who. And the really amazing thing as well is that my wife's best friend was living in England, and she got me 2 signed pictures of Tom Baker, which was like, oh my God, that was incredible. I grew up watching this guy. I grew up watching the, the cheesy sci-fi aspects of the 70s and 80s, and I absolutely adored it. And so anyways, what this is Doctor Who, Tom Baker, the complete season 1. And I sat and I watched the complete season 1 and every single special feature on here. I binged. It was 1 week of Tom Baker action, and to see the episodes remastered in high definition for the first time, I've never seen the episodes look so good. And just to be transported back to being a kid, I must have been 8, we're talking like, 6 years old till about, 10 years old, watching the Tom Baker saga. I just absolutely adored it, and it really took me back to some of those great old episodes. And there's some really good ones on here, like Robot, Ark in Space, The Sunterian Experiment, Genesis of the Daleks, which is so good, which has influenced so many Doctor Who, episodes since then. Highly, highly recommend this if you are a fan of Tom Baker, the old school Doctor Who. It really looks good, and there's a whole bunch of brand new special features on here. There's one that I want to mention. There's this documentary on here, which is so good, about what it was like trying to collect Doctor Who episodes in the 80s and how hard it was, and people were trading VHS tapes. It's all in high definition. It's this documentary that's in there, and this is crazy to say, it's almost worth buying the set for that documentary. Being a kid in the 80s, knowing what it was like to be into anime, I don't know what it was like collecting for Doctor Who. I didn't collect Doctor Who, I just watched it on TV. It was on. If it wasn't, I didn't watch it. But what these people had to go through, it was half the adventure was trying to get Doctor Who, it seems, back then in England, in Europe. Very cool. Highly recommend this. I'm looking forward to, please bring out the complete season 2. I don't know when we'll get that. I don't know if we'll get that. Okay, going back in time to my childhood, again, the very early 80s, I remember, I don't know if I was in England or if we just moved to Canada at the time. This movie came out in I think in 1979, 1980, 1981, during that time, or at least I saw it during that time. And it was not called this. I bought this on DVD years ago, and I adore this movie. But I watched this movie, I think when I was about 8 years old. Watched it with my parents, and it's really great stuff. When I saw it as a kid, the movie was called Folks, and that's the name of the main character. And it also got renamed as Sea Hijack. This is the Blu-ray. This just showed up, and something really, really weird happened. I found this on Blu-ray. I ordered it, but here's the thing: it's on goddamn Netflix. I had no idea. So it must have been about two and a half weeks ago. My wife went to bed because she had to get up really early for work. And it was a really nice evening. And oh my God, I watched this movie again. And I couldn't believe how fantastic it was. And is it one that I'd recommend? If it's on Netflix, watch it for free. You know what I mean? Watch it for free. It's Roger Moore. He's part of this elite tactical team that's trained in case there's any hijacks that go on, and his team will be sent in to take over the situation and remedy the situation. What it's about is Anthony Perkins is in this from Psycho. He's the bad guy. And at that time, I don't think anybody remembers, he was the big bad guy. And he was the main bad guy in this, and he'd taken over an oil refinery, and he was going to blow it all up. And yeah, it's with him and his evil little team that they're making this happen. And Roger Moore has got to go in and stop this event. And it's really old, and you can see the models for some of the oil refineries and stuff like that in the ocean. You're like, oh my God, and some of the ship shots. But this is part of my childhood. I remember watching it with my family. I can't believe Kim has said to me, my wife said to me, she's like, I cannot believe the movies that you watched with your family. Your family allowed you to watch them, because I watched so many ultra-violent movies in the 80s, and it kind of made me who I am today. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it really did. And anyway, sorry for going on about this, but this is something that I don't know, like I'm not sounding all hokey. I love this goddamn movie. It's a pure nostalgic ride, and I really enjoyed watching it recently. It was a lot of fun. Roger Moore, who's James Bond, before this, what gets me about his main character too is he's like this cat. He hates people, he loves cats, and he hates women. I mean, they would never make this movie now with his character, but his character is so interesting. It's like, anyways, I kind of recommend the movie. Now we have a few vinyl records to report on here. The first one sold out probably around 3 months ago. I tried to order it, sold out. I was able to finally get a copy when it was restocked, and that is for Transformers, the original G1 animated series. This is the original soundtrack on vinyl now. What can I say about this? I sat down a few weeks ago, grabbed a cup of tea because I'm British, and I sat down, I put this on, and I listened to the entire soundtrack. And small tear, man, I went back in time, back to like 1982, 83 when I first saw G1 on television, and that music is ingrained into my mind. That first episode was so like, whoa, my God, like the first time it's the first time I saw Transformers. And the music is kind of like, because of my age, and you know, at that age you memorize things. I memorized the soundtrack to this so much. And, you know, the other thing I want to say is, you know, the opening song, you know, the Transformers, More Than Meets the Eye, that song, the opening theme song, when it first started, the amazing thing about vinyl, and I'm not one of these guys who's going to argue about, vinyl is better than, you know, digital and blah, blah, blah. I'm not ever going to do that. But one thing I will say is that the opening theme song, I heard it in a way that I've never heard it before. And I've heard it for the last, 35 years of my life plus. I could not believe, the opening theme song goes on, but I heard the kids' voices in there, where when I was watching on TV, it kind of all melded into one. You knew there were other voices making up that theme song, but it was so distinct on vinyl. Anyways, I'm not here trying to sell this to anybody. I sold it to myself, and it's really, really good. That opening music is really awesome. So, highly recommend this. Try to look it up online for sure. I got it off some website, and I'm sorry, off the top of my mind, I cannot remember where. Okay, this is. I never talk about a lot of stuff outside of video games and anime and cartoons and stuff like that, but I will. Here, I bought a vinyl record off eBay, and trust me, there was only one. I did a long search for it, and I found it, and I was like, oh my God, this is I got a tape of this back in probably like 1988, when I went to, my dad bought me my first Walkman, a yellow Walkman, and this is the first tape I ever bought for it, and it was the Wee Papa Girls. We Rule, the beat, the rhythm, the noise. This, I'm not joking with you, is such a great nostalgic album for me. I listen to this all the time. These girls were unbelievable. I liked every single song on here. I know everybody's out there right now is going, what the hell? I remember I was doing a live stream with Rob years ago. And so one question came up in the channel, like, oh, what's some of your favorite music? And Rob's like, saying, oh, well, John's favorite music, he loves the Wee Papa Girls and all that. And I remember being like all embarrassed about it. I'm like, Rob, no, yeah. I was like, yeah, I like listening to the Dead Kennedys and really, hardcore stuff. Where, to say you like the Wee Papa Girls, I don't know. Because what's weird is I know that not many people know who these gals are. And they were really a big deal back then. I know they faded off into obscurity after that. And to be able to get this, I played this record all weekend. And even Kim was listening to it, and she's like, oh, this is really good music. I'm like, I know, I really like this music. As I say, my dad took us to Hawaii. He bought me a yellow Walkman, and I bought the tape back then, and I listened to it all my time in Hawaii. So there's a lot of really good memories involved there, and that's why I really want to pick up this. Okay, gonna try to get through the last couple really fast here. A couple anime records that I picked up, and some classics. We'll show this one. Arion, The Crush of Olympus. This is an anime that still has not been released to this day in the country. Still, all these years later, which is an absolute travesty. I think it's forgotten now. You can find it on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's like it's Arion. I highly recommend it. The music is just so damn good. Orchestrated music that it gives me shivers, and I listened to it maybe about a month ago, and I got, oh man, shivers listening to it. A lot of memories, because I had an imported tape of it, and I would watch it over and over. No subtitles back then, folks. I had to kind of figure out what was going on. I loved it. Another one of my favorite soundtracks from Japan, from the good old days of anime, from 1983, is Super Dimension Orgus, Century Orgus. This is such a great old anime that I love the music for. I had it on tape, and then I had the CD. But you know what's so crazy? I even remember buying the CD in 1999, and I remember going to Anime Expo, and I was just listening to this soundtrack over and over, my portable Discman. And go figure, we go into the future, and we're going back to the past with vinyl records again. And this is probably from back in 1983, and it sounds stupendous. There's no real, it doesn't sound really crackly and horrible like I don't know, someone would expect old records to sound like. I'm telling you, some of the older records sound better than new records. They really knew how to do it well back then. So, yeah, anyways, I had to get this soundtrack. I listened to this quite a lot as well. And, yeah, I did all of that in one take. Not one break, not one edit mistake, which is so good. I just wanted to share some of the things that I picked up lately. And you can tell that all these things really meant a lot to me. And that's why I picked them up. So, anyways, guys, until next time.